and we welcome you in. We have some new folks here tonight, and we want to welcome you. But I'm Chris Hull, and this is Dee Dee Parker. We've got Scott in the back. It's just good to be here. It's just good to be here. So, I want to start with prayer. We acknowledge fully that we are unabashedly faith-based here. We believe in the power of prayer. And so we're just going to start with the moment. Our Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to be here. And we're thankful to be on this journey together. You bring us together for a reason. You are a good, good Father, and we thank you, Father, for your goodness and your mercy. Let us learn from each other. Let us bring encouragement, hope, education, resources, all that we need. For Father, you put us on this journey, and we need you. So be with us. Help us to encourage and love one another. We pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we have some new folks tonight, and we have Alan in the back. Alan is coming alongside to volunteer, yes? Yes. And we welcome caregivers back so much. We have Mr. Lynn Davis over here, which is with us tonight. He's a caregiver for his wife, Bobby, right? And and we have our speaker, Robin Catalano, that's going to come up momentarily and speak to us tonight. And we're so blessed to have her, and we're blessed to have you. But just a few housekeeping details. We do have restrooms that are right outside to the right?
That one's
Is it?
kind of under construction.
Oh, okay.
So we're,
To the left. We're having to be very, the parking lot changed tonight. The buildings, I think, are coming down, and so but Lot C. I love the sign out here. Lot C. We're good there. But we do meet the fourth Tuesday of every month from 5:30 to 7. We will try to be very attentive to your time. I want you to know that. We do come, we have a comfort agreement. We have an agreement with each other that we will come and we will share in confidence, in safety, knowing that what is said here stays here. You don't have to worry about anything else going on. We do ask you that you limit side conversations because we want to respect everybody's voice here tonight and stay focused on the topic. A lot of us have war stories about other people, but we're going to try to keep it contained to, our own caregiver and that type of thing. So that's just housekeeping. 18 years and older is what we do. This is a peer support group. We are not counselors. But we do bring in educational resources, and tonight you'll find that to be true because many of you have contributed to our packets that we're handing out tonight, so we thank you for that so very much. But we are so pleased to have Robin Catalano with us tonight to speak to us because she brings to us a lot of wealth and richness, and she and her husband, Rich, have been married 25 years, yes? Yeah. And they're new to Cartersville. They came from Cherokee County. And in their 25 years of marriage, they've owned 4 dogs, right? They've raised 4 amazing kiddos. And most recently, they gained a bonus daughter and a son-in-law. So the family's expanding. And some facts that she's given us, they have moved, which is amazing, 13 times in 16 years.
Yeah, for 16 years.
They lived in Maine for 11 years, and they've homeschooled for most of their children's schooling years. And in addition, they have cared for both of your parents, both parents, oh my goodness, as their health declined over 9 years. And they shared a multi-generational home for 5 years. So you have been in the thick of it, here and there. And so she loves podcasts. She collects books and loves back porch conversations, and we are delighted to have you. So come and speak with us, Robin.
I'm gonna stand and lecture, right? I did bring some pictures of my family just because I think placing people is good. So this is here, I'll just pass them around because they're tiny.
Okay.
So this is my husband and my 4 kids, and then the other picture is the two add-ons that we've got. So I am so grateful to be here. I have to admit, I'm super nervous, and not because I'm speaking in public or that you guys are intimidating, but this is actually the first time that I've talked about this like this. And being that we've only been at Crosspoint for a year, a lot of people just aren't aware of this very long season of my life. It really is pretty defining for our family. So, I found today, I was like, wow, this is a little triggering to kind of go back and review some of this stuff. But I think that sometimes that's where the glory of the Lord appears the most, right? Is when we speak from some pain and grief and suffering. And so y'all just bear with me as I'm a little bit nervous and shaky talking about it. Just pray for me quietly, if you don't mind. I might get a little choked up a time or two. We'll get through it. So, I didn't come tonight prepared to share, a wealth of knowledge, because I think caregiving is so wildly nuanced, and every situation is different. And I think there's some black and white things that we can all kind of cement in, and we learn from one another. Financial plans. There's practical things. Maybe there's some help aids that are, we could probably sit around and talk about walkers and wheelchairs and ramps, and those things are really easy to grab a hold on, right? They're black and white. But I think offering any type of encouragement or sharing like stories is just so nuanced because it's very personal. And so I thought what would be helpful, I kind of in preparation thought, gosh, what would have benefited me years ago as I began this journey, or even a few years deep into the journey? What would I have gleaned from a group like this? And I think for me, just hearing somebody's story, you find encouragement. And I think sometimes in the midst of caring for someone you love with declining health or a terminal illness, you can feel like you're on an island, right? And I think a lot of times in those really lonely seasons, the enemy in our flesh fights for your joy and your peace and your hope. So, when you stand on the other side of things, there's a little bit more healing, and there's a little bit more, you get to see the full picture. So that's what I just wanted to do tonight. I just wanted to kind of share our story and how we got into the situation we were with my parents. And then I did have 4 points that I kind of wanted to share as I wrapped up. So I'm going to start off with talking about just our timeline. My mom and dad were boomers. My dad was born in 42, my mom in 45, Porter and Connie Higgins. They were married when my mom passed for 54 years. They had 3 children, and were just amazing human beings. My parents, so my parents came to know the Lord just about 2 years before I was born. So I had the honor of being raised in a home with just an enormous amount of godly influence, and scripture was on my walls. It was on my parents' lips. I don't ever remember not being in church. My dad was an elder. So I'm really grateful that I have that kind of reference point for caring for my parents, and also just my own personal story. Just knowing Jesus at a really young age and seeing my parents walk faithfully, literally until the day they died. So in 2010, I was married for 10 years, and my mom called us while we were in Maine and explained that she'd been diagnosed with COPD. My mom was a long-time smoker, and it caught up with her. She also was from the South, and she loved Little Debbie's and Krispy Kreme, so she also had a little extra dose of high blood pressure and diabetes, and just had a lot of physical ailments that were more lifestyle. And I say that because my mom was a spitfire until literally her last breath. Her illnesses never affected her cognitively. It was just her body could not keep up with her wild spirit. So in 2010, she explained that she had COPD, that it was advancing pretty quickly. She was on oxygen part-time at that point. The very next year, my dad called and said that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. My dad was a member of Mensa, was an incredibly bright man. He was a military guy. He was an engineer by trade. He was brilliant. He was a very, very sharp man. I never saw my dad in denim. He believed that men should wear khakis at all times and they should be starched. He wore penny loafers. Even to cut the grass, he wore penny loafers. He always had a collar on, always. He was just a man of deep principle. He served our community in so many ways. He served his family. He loved my mom. Just a top-notch, really tight man. So his diagnosis, I would say we were in a bit of denial because my dad's forgetfulness kind of made him normal. Like my dad's cognitive decline for a while was enjoyable because all of a sudden he started speaking in a way we could understand and would forget things like everybody else did. And so in 2011, after he found out that he had Alzheimer's, he decided that at the time we were in Maine and they were in Georgia, and he started having pretty aggressive conversations with me, being a planner and a type A person. And that same year, coincidentally, my husband and I had a job change and decided, my husband was actually laid off, and we decided to take that opportunity to leave Maine and try to get closer in the South. So we ended up, it's a whole nother story, we ended up in Georgia, and we agreed in about 2012 that we would have a long-term plan of them moving to Georgia and moving in with us. And at that time, it was just felt normal. I loved my parents. My mom was my best friend. And there was just no question in my mind that I wanted them to be with us. My husband got along wonderfully with my parents. They were amazing in-laws. My kids loved them to pieces, and it just didn't even seem, there was no question. It was like, oh yeah, and there was a lot of naivety in that. We just said yes because we loved them, and it felt like it would be an honor to take care of them, and it was. But a nursing home or assisted living or anything like that, or even some of your senior facilities, like my parents were just like, no, they had no interest in that, and we had no interest in seeing them in that kind of a situation either. So in 2014, both of their health had kind of progressed to a point that we were going down to Florida about every 6 weeks. And this was reasonable because my husband worked from home and my children were homeschooled, like Chris shared. So we were able to get to Florida pretty frequently, and I would basically go down, I'd help with doctor's appointments, we'd help with taking care of the house. We started preparing to sell it, started downsizing my mom's 25 collections of dishes, pottery, and all the things the boomers collected. We got to sell at yard sales for 25 cents a piece. So I'm sure you guys can relate to that, the closets of just stuff that they collected over the years. They have boxes from when my dad retired in the 80s from the military that we were selling off when they moved. In February of 2015, my parents sold their house and moved to Georgia. We decided we had purchased a house. We actually moved into a particular house. My mom had two requests. She wanted windows and her own entrance. She didn't want to come and go into our home. She wanted to have independence. And so we moved from one house into a house in Canton and did a construction project there that was handicap accessible, that fit their needs. And so they went ahead and moved to Georgia. They actually lived in our main living space with us while the construction project went on. 2015, we also had to establish care and new doctors, which was a whole thing. So my children, for reference at this point, were 12, 11, 7, and 5. That fall, the year that my parents moved in, that fall we decided to go ahead and enroll my children in public school. We liked the Cherokee school system, and I knew that just getting my parents established was going to be a full-time job, and it was probably going to need a lot of my time. And then in 2016, my dad was still driving. He was still independent. He was still pretty sharp. Again, you would never know that he had any kind of cognitive decline. The main thing was he had to use a GPS, and he would forget doctor's appointments. But he still managed their finances. He still kept their calendar. He still was memorizing about 15 to 20 verses of scripture a week. I mean, just still felt very sharp and capable. And then in March of 2016, my dad, our neighborhood had actually hired him to cut down trees in our neighborhood. My dad was very fit. He was actually wanting to run the peach tree that year. And he was cutting down a tree, and he had a mild heart attack. So he refused to go to the doctor. We all knew he was having a heart attack, and he refused to go to the doctor. By the next morning, both of his arms were numb, and he was sweating profusely. And so we knew the situation was getting worse, not better. So we called 911, and he had a second heart attack en route to the hospital, and this time significantly more severe. He was hospitalized, and about a week later, they went ahead. His heart attack was where the widowmaker is, and they went in to put a stent in, and it failed, and he had a stroke during the procedure. So between March and July, my dad proceeded to have another heart attack. He proceeded to have 4 more significant strokes. In June, he had open heart surgery, and then by the end of July, we started adding seizures to the mix. So by the fall, my father had went from planning to run the peach tree, memorizing long passages of scripture, managing my parents' finances, to having the cognitive function of a 9-year-old. He had left side weakness. He was blind in his left eye. He developed severe OCD and paranoia. In the midst of this, every concert date night we had was canceled. We had 3 family trips that we canceled. I had a birthday trip to Europe that we canceled. In addition, my 4 kids, who are 12, 11, 7, and 5, are in their first year of public school. They're all involved in sports. We had football, we had baseball, we had track. We had homecoming. We had first dates. My youngest was in kindergarten, and out of nowhere started just having severe colds, was diagnosed with asthma, and then had so many back-to-back infections that he was temporarily deaf in one of his ears. We had to pull him from public school because of his health. So I say all that to give all of you a picture, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, that life kind of goes on. You're caring for this vacuum, this need over here, but there's so many other compartments of your life that never slow down. It doesn't stop one bit. Those problems keep growing and getting bigger, or good things happen that you have to show up for, and that feels weird. There's weird tension to go from an ICU room to a birthday party. Sometimes that's what that season looked like. The very next year, my husband took a new job, which ended up being a nightmare of a job. He was traveling a significant amount of time, which meant that I was at home with 4 kids and 2 parents, dealing with getting driver's permits and girlfriends and parents that were unwell and unable to care for themselves. And at this time, both of my parents refused to have in-home care. My husband ended up needing back surgery that spring due to a pretty severe injury. At that point, my mom agreed to having someone clean her house and have someone sit with my dad from Comfort Keepers while she grocery shops once a week. She then proceeded to wreck her car 3 times. We tried to go to Florida and have a family member stay with them, and that trip got cut short because my mom ended up in the hospital while we were on that vacation. We then agreed to have more full-time care. Actually, it wasn't full-time care. It was still part-time care, but on a more regular basis. Someone was coming in regularly to help, and we attempted to hire a nurse to stay with my parents while we took our first family vacation in 5 years to Washington, D.C. We were standing in the Smithsonian when we got a phone call that my dad had flooded their entire apartment in the middle of the night. So we had neighbors that had to come over and vacuum out the 2 inches of standing water that was in my basement. They had to help my parents get upstairs because they couldn't be in the basement to sleep, which meant also transferring a 300-pound oxygen tank. My mom at this point was on full oxygen 24/7. We thought it was fine. 2 days later, we were at the mall in DC, and we got another phone call that my dad had broken the air conditioning unit, and so we got in our car the very next day and came home. The AC was because he was trying to fix it, because he was very paranoid that my mom was hot, which would agitate her breathing, and so he just wrecked it to pieces and just trashed it. So we had to replace the AC, and that was another little bit of a disaster. So that June, my mom was hospitalized again, and was hospitalized actually 4 times between June and July. Sorry. We found her unconscious, and she passed on August 2nd, which was my daughter's first day of high school, my son's first day of 10th grade. Quickly left the IC unit, checking the death certificate, and went to my daughter's hair appointment because she had homecoming the next week. I laugh not because it's funny, but because it's just super ironic. In 2018, so that was in August, we quickly moved my father upstairs to live with us as a family. His cognitive ability at that time was very weak, limited, and was constantly forgetting that my mom had passed, And so it was just a really sweet and tender season that we were able to just love on him and be with him. And unfortunately, as he continued to get more confused, we started having issues where he was falling. We increased in-home care, but even with that, he became very combative and violent with the caregivers. So that became a whole point that we had to deal with. And then he escaped 3 different times. So it was at that point, I'm so sorry, we made a decision that we needed to transition him to assisted living care, because at that point it was obviously a significant risk to his health. Each time he got out of our house, he escaped naked. So that wasn't a good look either. And so, so in 2018, he moved into the Arbor in Canton, and he stayed there until he passed in May of 2020 during COVID. His assisted living situation was really interesting. They knew of COVID in January. So in January of 2020, they actually shut the facility down. So though my dad passed in May, I had not seen him. I did not see him since January. That was a really painful thing to navigate as well, because COVID made that situation a disaster. We were never able to go in and get his belongings. I showed up, and at the driveway, they had a black bag, a trash bag with his belongings, and half of them were even his. His wedding band was missing. All of his watches were missing. His photo albums were missing. We had Susie's towels, though, whoever Susie is. Several ladies' underwear. It was a disaster. It was very, very sad. So, of course, 2019 and 20 looked like a lot of therapy and a lot of counseling for myself and my family. There's probably a lot of details that I'm leaving out. I feel like, sometimes it's just easier to rush through those details real fast, because if you sit and ponder too much, it can be a little tender. But I share all of that because I think, going back to what I said in the beginning, I wanted to honor my parents. I loved them deeply, and I didn't want them to be in a situation where they were uncomfortable, or that they had to be around strangers, or in a situation that they were dishonored by people that I didn't know or trust. I wanted my dad to go out as the incredibly smart first sergeant that I knew him to be, and I wanted my mom to be honored as the amazing mom she was. And I think we were fearful that some of the other options would have limited their the respect they would have received. I think what I didn't realize is that regardless of whether they're in your home or in a care facility, you still at some point are dependent on complete strangers, and at some point you're still having to trust people in their lives and still advocate for them in a way that I guess I didn't know that I would be asked to advocate for. Even inside my home, there was just so many things that even though they were in my home, I couldn't protect them from, things that were inevitable that I didn't know. Of course, we thought that they were moving in with us because my dad was going to have this really slow decline, that, I was naive again, thinking it was just going to be this disappearing, instead of just in a matter of 6 months, we had him and he was gone. And so we had made a lot of plans, again, considering it was going to be my dad was going to be around longer than my mom. And that's just how caregiving goes, right? You have an idea of what it's going to look like, and then there's all these little plot twists along the way. So I think something I didn't realize is that caregiving happens by degrees. I think that we started off where we were, going to Blue Ridge for the weekend, and we were apple picking, and my mom wasn't on full need of oxygen, and she was actually making us dinner a couple of nights a week. And like I said, they hired my dad to do lawn care. And so we started off this process with caregiving being kind of shallow and as needed. And then by the end, caregiving was an all-consuming, full-time request that asked of me things that I was never prepared for, spiritually, financially, physically, emotionally. I think hindsight would have been, helpful. I think I was young. I turned 40 in the midst of this, so there really wasn't any peer support. No one my age was really going through this. Neither one of my siblings were able to participate at all. There was some broken relationship there, some addiction that left me as the sole provider for care. And there just wasn't, there were no resources like there are now then. At the time, even the facilities were very limited on for Alzheimer's care, like what they would take, what they wouldn't take. We were desperate to try to find a place at the end. The last few months when we realized how bad things were getting, my dad was consistently breaking things in the house, and situations where he would get aggressive with the caregivers, or we had some situations where he turned up my mom's oxygen so high that we ran out of oxygen, and then the doctor wouldn't give her a new prescription for oxygen because it was just kind of this messy disaster for about 3 months. And when that kind of was like peaking, my mom agreed, this is beyond just full-time care of even like a nurse moving in with us. This goes beyond that. She agreed to assisted living. We had a horrible time finding a place that, he would have a private room, that he would have, the ratios felt safe, that she could be on site in a private room either with him or close by. Now there are homes that are kind of everywhere. There are significantly more support groups. So, I think some of the stress that I faced that I would encourage everyone is, just being more educated and having more resources of help and education on all of it. I didn't have that. I wish I had. I just want to point out a couple things, and then I just want to open it up to questions. So some things that we fought over and things that we didn't know. So like I said, I didn't know how much support I would need. Anybody that I ever have a private conversation with, the first thing out of my mouth is, you cannot do this alone. You cannot do this alone. You must have support. We did not understand the financial implications that we were taking on. At the time, we just thought my parents were going to move in, and they were putting a large investment into our basement renovation. We had to navigate that with a lawyer, because once we knew that my dad was in a position where his care could get very expensive and they could run out of money, we found out that there was a 5-year look back with Medicaid. And so we actually realized through a lawyer that Medicaid could actually put a lien on our home or force us to sell our home to get the equity out of our house to pay for his care if they did run out of money. My parents also just generously and naively wanted to just kind of give everything to us and the grandchildren, and we just didn't realize how quickly what assets look like, and how complicated that can be from a legal perspective. So I remember we first sat down and did a will, and then we went back when the construction project started when we started doing the construction project, we had someone just by word of mouth say, hey, you better cross your T's and dot your I's, this could get really complicated. And it was just an expense we didn't expect. It was thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees to protect my parents, very small assets, but to protect them and to protect our home was an investment we had no idea that was necessary. We didn't realize all the complications of end-of-life directives. So some details that I left out was my mom was, she didn't want any type of resuscitation. She just was like, if I'm going out, let me be. I'm going home with Jesus, let it be. Because she was diabetic, when we found her unconscious, we could not detect a pulse. And when the EMTs arrived, they immediately started doing life-saving procedures, assuming that she had just lost consciousness because of from the diabetes, which technically EMTs don't have to honor because they don't have that in front of them. It's not like a hospital; they don't have it on hand, so they don't have to honor anything. So in the chaos of the moment, I was trying to quickly get children out of the home so they wouldn't see my mom in that condition. My 16-year-old had found her, and so we were dealing with him. My husband was doing compressions, and when the EMTs arrived, there were no questions. They just immediately started doing life-saving. So she was intubated, which was very messy. She was responsive as well, but it became, I mean, that's a whole other 45-minute conversation, but it became incredibly messy. We actually had Northside Hospital called ethics on us because I was pushing to try to find out what kind of quality of life. We were trying to determine how long she had been without oxygen, if there was significant brain damage, what her next steps would be. Would she be able to come home to my dad? Was she going to be intubated for long term? Like, we were trying to honor her will and her last wishes. And they just wanted to immediately take her off intubation and see what happened. And it was a disaster. It was horrible. They wanted to do it very quickly before I could get family members in. Like I said, it was the first week of back to school. So, and this sounds so crazy now, but my kids were starting school, and so I'm trying to deal with the bank and the lawyer and calling family members, and I'm wanting to be bedside. My husband's trying to rush in from being out of town, and my 16-year-old wanted to make sure that I had his Nike socks ready, and my daughter wanted to make sure her hair was done for school. And these aren't selfish kids. This was just such a way of life for us. The longest period we had gone in 2015 and 16 without calling 911 or going to a hospital or rehab was 5 weeks. So this was such a rhythm for my children of in and out of hospitals that they didn't think anything to say. I have a hair appointment. I know mom's in ICU. Nana's in ICU and she's intubated. But she'll get out of this. She always does. She'll make it. She'll be fine. She'll be, eating boiled peanuts next week. That was just kind of their energy. And so as a parent, you're also trying to protect that innocence, and you are trying to protect their lives, and you are trying to protect what they have going on and care for their needs as young people. They shouldn't have to burden that. But then also be present for my mom, So that was something we didn't really talk through, is how complicated that end of life plan can be if EMTs are found. We'll see, what are some other things? Construction issues. We did not realize that handicap everything is significantly more expensive. So when my parents were budgeting end of life care and budgeted to renovate the basement, a handicap sink is significantly, doorways, everything was so much more expensive. They absolutely blew their budget and our budget, even down to, we did not realize, because it was a basement, we wanted a handicap bathroom situation and we couldn't because it was a basement type of a situation. We would have had to have this weird pump. I'm not in construction, I don't know what it was, but it was very complicated and very disappointing to my mom because the shower bath situation was just very uncomfortable for her because we didn't get a full handicap accessible bathroom because it was in the basement. That was something I wish I knew about ahead of time. Medicine and hospital visits. I did not realize how much of a historian I was going to have to be, and that I was going to have, my own made-up degree in medicine and taking care of my parents. I did not realize how confused my parents as elderly patients would be over medication. We had so many instances where my mom would under-medicate herself or over-medicate herself, all by accident. But again, there was times that I would entrust her to go to the doctor and she'd come back and be completely confused about what the practice of care was going to be. My dad also was a military man. He didn't believe in medicine. So he would get prescribed medicine and we would find him under his pillow, just stubborn guy. I didn't think that was going to be an issue, having to fight with them over medicine, even though in my mind I'm like, this makes you feel better, why are you not taking it? Hospital visits, I think something else that was really confusing that we didn't talk about was my mom had this idea that every hospital stay, I should be there 24/7, that I should be bedside. She was very scared to be in the hospital for extended amounts of time alone. She was terrified. She didn't trust the doctors, didn't trust hospitals. And she would get very hurt by the fact that I was leaving her to go to football practice. Like, to her, that just did not matter. And I never faulted her in that, but that was just a really weird thing to navigate that no one chatted with me about or that I thought of. Driving, I had not thought about what that would look like. It was really sad when they stopped being able to drive. Their decline when that was taken away was significant, and it was so hard to watch. And as a result, I tried to be available way more than I should have to just take them out for drives, and it was just a very complicated thing. Doctor transparency. My mom suddenly felt great when we would show up in the doctor. For 2 weeks, she would feel terrible, and then I was made to look like the liar sitting in the doctor's office. I don't know what she's talking about. Like that, she's just making it up. She's dramatic. That was complicated. House noise. We were not prepared to deal with the sensitivity that they had to the noise that my 4 children and their friends had. We had a swimming pool, and multiple times we had to literally lock my dad, deadbolt him, rig him in, pull the curtains, because he was convinced that my children were drowning. He just had cognitive confusion, and any splashing in the pool, he would try to get in the pool with them, and obviously that was not safe. But it was very interesting living with somebody that had that cognitive decline. Just their perspective of what's happening around them was constantly skewed, and you just never planned to think about that. My parents moving from Florida, we never thought about the fact that they would have no community, that finding a church was new. That was a major mistake for us. And like I said, we just did not have a lifeline. It just felt like we hit go, and it was kind of crisis mode for about 3 years, and it was, swim or sink. And I'm really grateful for people that didn't wait for me to ask for help. They just kind of showed up. Big plug for being a part of a church is that that is what is so amazing about a church community is, you think you don't look like you're drowning to everybody around you, and everybody sees you drowning, and they just show up with meals, and they show up at football practices, and they take kids to nail appointments, and remember to feed the dogs for you. So 2 other things. Things that we fought over. This is all negative, but I swear we're getting somewhere positive. Things that we. Another thing that we fought over is just reality. I think that was probably the hardest thing, is that my mom constantly believed that they were going to be healed, that the rapture was going to happen, that they were going to wake up in 3 days and everything was going to be better, that the doctors got it wrong. And part of it was my dad's cognitive changes were, unique. Like one day anybody with Alzheimer's is like this. One day you're there, the next day you're not. One day he's, telling stories from 1955, clear as day, and then the next day he's not sure who my mom is. And so any type of hope my mom could grab onto, she would, and she would kind of cycle through this period of like denial. So we would have like a week of health for both of them, and then she would independently cancel doctor's appointments, or cancel in-home care, or cancel the nursing appointments or physical therapy, and then I was left scrambling to be like, okay, that's great that you had this great week. I don't want to be the one that rains on your parade, but you're still both sick. We still, nursing homes, rehab, something I, again, did not prepare for, is that most likely in elder care, there will be a period of time where you are in a rehab facility. And I had done 0 homework on good rehab facilities and what that looks like. And so as a result, my dad at one point he was discharged, and there was only 1 rehab facility that was available, and he got sent there. It was horrific. I found my dad just hours after being admitted, standing in a corner. He had urinated all over himself. He had all of his clothes on backwards and had ripped out an IV. And that was within just like a couple of hours of arriving. It was horrific. And so it was like a TV show. I literally picked that man up with urine all over him, just set him in my car, and away we went. I didn't even sign papers. I was like, we're out of here. I don't know what rules we're breaking, but you're not staying in this place. But I didn't know my rights. I didn't know what I could contend for. I didn't know I didn't know my area, what good nursing homes, rehab facilities there were. That was something I wish I had done way back when my parents were 60 years old and healthy. I wish we had had these conversations about what does that look like, what type of care if we do need that. I didn't realize how uneligible they were for financial help. My parents saved, and they made amazing financial decisions, and it actually hurt them in the end. They were ineligible for so many programs and so much help, and it was just expected that they were to pay out of pocket for everything, which, if you don't know, in home nursing care and private care is wildly unaffordable. So that was something else. Okay, the hidden blessings. Gosh, for every negative thing, and that was a lot of negative things, right? I would do it all over again. And I know that sounds so wild. I would do it all over again because prior to my folks moving in with us, my husband and I, we fasted and we prayed. We sought some serious counsel from trusted people. We were not naive to the fact that this would be hard and difficult and a big ask for all of us. We were not naive that there would be things we did not know, unexpected difficulties. But we really felt like this is what we were being asked to do, that we felt it was an honor to do it, and we wanted to be available. And the downside to my kids' really sensitive formative years being impacted wildly by having to share their parents with their grandparents was that my children got to see what it looks like to stay married to someone, to be faithful, to sit bedside and pray. They got to see what it looks like to hope when things seem hopeless. Remember when we were in DC, something I thought was so cool about my kids is almost every museum we went in, they were looking to see if it was handicap accessible. They were constantly like, Dad's walker would not work here, and where would Mom plug in for her oxygen? Like it was just so cool to see that my kids became very sensitive to a marginalized people group that are oftentimes forgotten or seen as less than. I witnessed my kids fighting for my grandparents' dignity. I remember my son one time was all of 16 years old, and a caregiver kept calling my dad sugar baby. And my 16-year-old walked in the room and said, "That's Mr. Higgins to you." I was very proud. So as a result, my teenagers at a very young age loved older people. I mean, when my parents both passed, my kids would say, "We miss the nursing home. Like, we miss going and having conversations with older people." They saw the value of aging. They saw that just because some things are declined, maybe don't work right, that if someone is breathing, they have a purpose. And they understood at a very young age to seek that out and to admire it, to honor it. I got to see what marriage looks like when the person you love has disappeared. I got to see the beauty of dependency, what it means to depend on one another. I think we started this because my parents were like, "We're independent. We want independence." And, again, maybe it was because they were born in the 40s. There was this almost idolization of independence. And we quickly, all of us, learned that it's biblical and it's beautiful to be dependent. And I don't know that we would have learned that if we weren't intimately involved in caregiving. We learned the fragile nature of life, that every single person is going to die. To be on mission, my dad literally, until his last breath, was witnessing to people like that. Like, he couldn't remember, what he ate 20 minutes ago, but there was something really unique, and I know this isn't everybody's story, but my dad remained so sharp with scripture, and he would just be bedside, telling the gospel story to a nurse, or praying over someone, or laying hands on someone and praying for them. So that was something that was so beautiful to see. We have a unique perspective of eternity. My kids and I have real estate in eternity, and it makes it a little less, fictional. It feels very real. It's very close to us. We know what eternity looks like. We've had to wrestle with it. We've had to put our hope there. And I think the other thing is that as a parent, your desire is to shield your children so much from anything that could be difficult or hurtful. And because of what I said yes to, I could not do that. I literally put my kids in harm's way multiple times. and asked of them to do very difficult, hard, emotional things. And I think the massive lesson for me was that, they're not my children. They belong to the Lord first and foremost, and He's writing their story. And pain and suffering and grief and death is part of all of our story. And I actually think it's a blessing that my kids got to understand that at such an early age. And if I had listened to maybe what was comfortable or easy or even what the world suggested I do for the care of my parents, I would have protected my kids from that lesson. I would have protected my marriage from that. There is a part of the Lord that I understand so completely different. I think sometimes when I chat with people and they're like, oh, He'll give you a peace, or His presence, like when you're in the midst of caregiving, that can feel so distant. And I think something about my personal testimony is that I walked through a very long season where it was lonely, it was hard. I didn't see the other person standing in the fire with me. I did feel very hopeless. We were constantly in the thralls of sickness and decay and pain and sorrow, and I lost my temper, and I lost my testimony, and so often I was burning both ends of the candle, and to know that the Lord was still so faithful, and that He forgives, and that when He's asking you to do something, He understands that it's not always going to be done with excellence. It's not always going to be done with perfection. That isn't when we say yes to doing hard things for the kingdom of God or for people we love, there is a freedom that I understand because of taking care of my parents, that God's grace is necessary, it's needed, and it extends very far. And I'm grateful for understanding that after going through such difficult things. I'm rambling now. Okay, 11 things that I have here to help with burnout. Find services in your area. You will burn out. You absolutely will burn out. So find services in your area. Ask for help. Make healing habits of prayer, Bible, reading, music. We went through a season where, you don't have time to go for a walk. You don't have time to go out on a date. You don't have time to do you don't have time to go to the gym. We were eating Hot Pockets and pizza rolls. It was like crisis mode for so long. And I'm thankful for the scripture that I have memorized, because there were so many times I'm behind the ambulance and I'm just, shouting scripture out, or I'm just praying with the Lord and walking through that. Don't deny yourself just being quiet and still with the Lord and meditating on His sufficiency, because you are insufficient. You are insufficient. Make sure that you model an attitude of respect for everyone, for your children, and for the elderly in your home. Meal times, predictable meal times. This became something that was so important to our family, was a meal time. I don't know, it was just important to my parents, it was important to us. Sometimes we would just sit in silence, but just sitting together and eating was important. That helped with burnout. It was just something odd that we could look forward together. It wasn't a doctor's appointment. It wasn't, medication. It was just sitting and eating together. Anticipate your own health concerns. Keep your favorite snacks on hand. So, chocolate is important. Exercise, but also have realistic goals. You're going to have periods where maybe exercise looks like walking up and down the hospital hallway. I remember literally doing stretches in the hospital waiting room, because I had just sat, when my dad had open heart surgery for 10 hours. And so me and 5 people that I didn't even know were doing calisthenics and stretches in the waiting room, because, what else do you do? Don't major on the minors. I fought with my mom over so many things that I wished I hadn't. I was fighting for years, and she was just fighting for the day. So major the majors. Fighting over taking vitamin C was probably not something I should have done at that point. Delegate household chores, but keep them simple and understand that in certain seasons it's all going to fall off. It's just all going to fall apart, and that's okay. It's like that's what I mean about like understanding God's grace for us, and then you extend that to the people around you. When you walk through these dark days, God's grace is understood in such a deep way, and you just can't help but mirror that to people around you. Listen well and learn to read between the lines. I literally feel like I learned when my mom was lying about, did you sleep well? And she, be twitching. But just learning how to read between the lines for the doctors, for the caregivers, for the kids. I think everything is ambiguous sometimes. People know there's a lot of things that are hurting in your life, and so they tend to be vague with you. Like my kids would like gatekeep the fact that they failed a test, or my neighbor would, gatekeep the fact that my dog got out, or like the doctor sometimes would be very careful with what information they were giving, or my mom wouldn't tell me that my dad hadn't slept in like 3 days. Sometimes there was little bits of information that as the caregiver people keep from you, and that can be both frustrating and not helpful. And so learning how to learn and read in between the lines is super helpful. 2 more. Give yourself to enjoy hobbies. Give yourself permission to enjoy hobbies, whatever that is. Find a hobby. I know it's a weird time to pick up a hobby, right? But because again, your margin for time is so small. But maybe it is something so simple that you can just keep in your bag and take to the hospital or take to rehab. Picking up crocheting, word cross. Like, it sounds so silly, but having something that your brain can completely check out of from whatever role you have, whether it's mom, caregiver, just something that asks nothing of you. And then the last thing I would say is don't allow yourself to entertain what ifs and if only. Just constantly say, I'm doing the best I can. Again, it goes back to that grace. It is so hard to walk through caring for somebody that you love in the last few days of your life, or years. Maybe it is a really long goodbye. And I think the enemy, and I'll close with this, I think the enemy in your flesh loves to constantly get in where your fractures are. The argument you may have had, the doctor's appointment that you couldn't make, the frustration that you've said something 20 times to somebody. And I think that we have such a high commitment to showing up for the people we love well and consistently, that we often do not have grace for when we are not enough and we cannot meet it completely. We weren't designed to die, and so dealing with death should feel very unnatural. And have grace for yourself that it hurts so much, that it is so difficult, that it is so confusing. And understand that when you fail, it just points to the fact that we have a God who never fails. Every single thing that we walk through in life ultimately is designed to teach us about our flesh and about God's power. And when I look back, I think about all the different moments that I failed, and it just brings into major focus my humanness, my weakness, my inability. And I think that's important because when you're caregiving, you just want to do it all. You just want to show up 150% all the time. And no one can do that. No one but the Lord. And you just have to remember that and tell yourself, I'm doing the best that I can. And it's okay that I didn't do it perfect because I can't. You cannot do it perfect. So that's all. I wanted to, that was a lot longer than what I thought. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if anybody has questions. I don't think I will have a lot of answers, but maybe, I don't know.
first I would like to say I'm in awe. A young person going through all of that stuff and being able to sit here and tell us about it. I mean, you're wonderful.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You really gave from your heart, and it's so obvious.
I was speaking for years and years, and have taught, Bible. This might be the hardest thing I've done in a very, very, very long time. Because it's just, if I would write something, I'd say, I'm not going to say that, I'm going to cry. I should share this. No, I'm not ready. Can't share that still. And maybe that's even a testimony of that. I don't know that there are parts of my caregiving heart that will be healed until heaven. That's just how it is. But I appreciate that. But did you have a question?
Do I have a question? No? I think you covered it all, everybody. You were taken care of.
Yeah, a lot of information.
I mean, wow. Yeah, you should write a book. At least have a pot.
And caring for both ends of the spectrum, children and parents.
Yeah.
It's very different.
That's a unique perspective many times.
Yeah.
So you've got the young family.
Yeah. There's so many funny stories too of, that you just, watching my son burn out one of the oxygen tanks one time because he was playing Star Wars with her tank, and it's just, when you have two ends, it's like, what are we doing? Sometimes it was a fun house. Sometimes it literally felt like we were at the circus. What are we doing?
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. To the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah.
Because it's and I think probably there are many things that you can certainly relate to, pick it out, right? Yeah. The chaos, right? Lots of chaos, right? One of the big lessons that you mentioned, and it's one I think it's one of the most difficult, is that you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
You can't be enough for it all. It's just not possible. And if you're trying to hold yourself to that standard, it's going to be a hard way to go, right? And then beyond that, which we're going to touch on a little bit, but the financial implications, you can have no idea of the financial, the medical, the legal ramifications that you perhaps are going to run into along the way in the end of life, and it can get very complicated. You said it so well. Very complicated, very chaotic, and things that you don't anticipate. And then the personal things that you don't anticipate is the fear. The fear of what's happening for your care receiver, the paranoia, not knowing what's going on, not being able to process, right? Being able to process. So there's many things, and then as you very much mentioned, end of life complications, you don't understand. You think you maybe have all your things lined up, and perhaps you don't. So with that said, we are going to hand out to you a packet of information. And some of this you've seen before. On the left-hand side, you have seen, if you call the EMTs, all right, on your refrigerator, if you have the list of medications, surgeries, everything having to do with that patient. So when the EMTs hit your door, you don't have to have a lot of conversation. You've got this on your refrigerator. I think some suggest keeping this on top of your refrigerator in a folder so that you have it. Right, so that's the first thing. And then if your care receiver is being cared for in a hospital or a facility, or you have someone come to your house, you've got your care receiver's personal records and stuff. You want to have all that, as much of that lined up as you can. So That's that. And honestly, this information came to you from everybody here. I think Sue sent this to us on the elder attorneys because we had a question last month about, we don't recommend anybody here, but we had, I think besides the McCoy Law Firm, we were looking at elder care lawyers. And so Sue has done some research and given us some other choices here in the county for elder law. So if in fact you're trying to line things up, an elder law attorney would be the way to go. And another thing that Diane brought to us was very interesting, and that's this little sheet here that says the Social Security Administration does not recognize a state-issued power of attorney, right? Durable, health care, or otherwise. There are two other avenues that you have to pursue from the Social Security Administration. So your power of attorney, your state power of attorney is not a one and done. So you need to be aware of that.
So
And then,
I have a question.
yes,
All right, so with these two, so I need to also have a representative, a need this designee? Is that what I'm understanding?
You've got two choices.
Okay.
If the person if the Social Security benefits for the person of interest is still able to make decisions, then you can either by calling the Social Security Administration or online, you can designate up to 3 different people who will be your, who will take care, who are able by your own designation to take care of your Social Security benefits and make decisions if you're not able to. So you can do that in advance.
So right now, since I'm cognizant, I can call Social Security and say,
Correct.
I want this person, this person, and this person
Yep. And all they need is a name and a phone number.
to take care of my needs. and
Benefits when I'm not able to make the decision.
Okay.
So you can do that now. I know.
Okay.
I've done that now. But your second choice is, okay, what happens if the person whose benefits are in question is no longer cognitively to handle the decisions? That's when you have to fill out, there's a form they mentioned there, something, SSA 11BK, which then you need to go to the Social Security Administration and get them to approve and sign off on to allow you to then make the decisions on behalf of the person whose benefits are in question. So those are your two choices. Either get them to do it ahead of time while they're still able to make decisions on their own, which is, in my estimation, the preferred way. But if it's too late, then SSA 11BK is the form you need to download, get a hold of, and get filled out.
So I can just call Social Security
Correct.
and do that over the phone.
Either way, whichever way you got to
Or
go.
online. Okay.
Hope you've had better experiences on the phone with them than I have. Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
and so did you want to come up and talk about the advanced group?
Yes, on this side of the page, there's Georgia Advanced Directive. It's 30 pages. The first 15 are all the explanations.
I didn't print the first 13, by the way. I just
Good,
printed the
good.
front sheets.
Okay,
Because
so
you can
you
go
don't,
online.
yes, so when you literally have this filled out and you need copies wherever, you know, if you're taking it to doctors, taking it to the hospital, giving it to the kids, giving it to whoever, your spouse, whatever, you don't have to have all 30 pages, just the last 15, which that's what you've got basically here, is the 1 to 15 is what you fill out. And it starts out with your name, your birth date, and then it goes into the details of everything for end of life. And you just initial what you want.
Does this have to be notarized? I mean,
No.
stamped? No.
No.
Okay.
So it's nice and easy that way. It does have to be witnessed. So on the second to last page, don't sign it until you're in front of 2 witnesses and they can do it.
Okay. Okay, so I can fill it all out and then just have two witnesses.
Yes, yes.
If you did this in your will, what happened? Is it okay?
No, you need this. You need this. The will is great, and I would say, make sure the will, has been seen by an attorney or a lawyer, somebody that has been, if you can afford it. But this has to be for hospitals, doctors, medics, yeah.
This is included in my will, so.
If it's included in your will, great. If they put an advance directive in your will and you filled this out in your will, yes,
A
then
lot of
you're
hospitals
okay.
don't have access to the will, so that's why it's important to have
Important to
one.
have it.
I
Yes.
literally had a
Should be a
picture
second
of it
one.
on my phone that Northside accepted, just a picture of it. But, fun fact, have them in your car. I had one in every single car we had. Because there were so many times that we're following an ambulance.
Right.
And I didn't, and if it's an emergency situation, they're making life-saving decisions immediately, and you need to be able to literally whip that out of your pocket.
Be careful about having this information in your will. The laws in Georgia changed in 2007, and anything that was done prior to 2007, if you've modified it since 2007, it's no longer legally valid. The advance directive replaced both power of attorney, do not intubate, and do not resuscitate, and living will. So it combined a lot of documents into one.
Go through the four that it replaced.
It replaces,
DNR.
takes the place of a DNR, a DNI, because in Georgia, both have to be in place.
Yeah.
That, the do not resuscitate is like CPR. DNI takes care of being intubated, right? Living will, I know that I had a living will modified it after 2007, only to find out it's not legally valid anymore. The laws have changed. And the power of attorney for medical decisions, it replaces all of those.
This is it.
Power of attorneys have the right to override a DNR and a do not intubate as well, and that's why, this sounds so worded, but it's really important to have your mind wrapped around that, because like, for example, my dad was at a nursing home. I mean, this was like on his wall, it was in his chart, everything. He died because he had forgotten how to swallow, and he choked. And they called and asked me if they wanted to perform life-saving measures. So what I found out in the mess of it all is that because I have power of attorney and power of health, what is it, power of
Medical
health,
power of
yeah.
attorney.
I could
covers that.
override that if I wanted to. And so that was just a really odd question to be faced in that moment. Because what caregiver is like, yeah, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like you spend years saving and helping, and then all of a sudden in the midst of something that could go awry, you're like, yeah, don't, just let that. Like, it just is so unnatural. But I was asked for both parents if I wanted to. One was when we found her unconscious and we got to the hospital, he said she's been intubated and she has a do not intubate. Do you want me to take this out or figure out if this is, from something else? So I overrode.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is once you fill this out and get it notarized or get it witnessed, but go over it with your spouse, with your family members who you've chosen as agents. They might not agree with your decisions, but they'll know your decisions.
Yeah.
So they might not agree with what you've chosen. They might choose for themselves something totally different, but you've asked them and you've talked to them and told them what you want. And that way, they'll just, when crisis hits and when it happens, they'll pull this out and the doctor or medical team or whoever is going to ask you, do you agree with this? Because you're an agent on here. They'll say, Mom or Dad wanted this, so follow these directions.
And the person whose name needs to have a copy
My family did not want to be the one to make the decision. My friend is gonna make the decision. So she needs a copy.
Yes, yes.
So it may not be family.
But go over it with that friend or person or
So
whoever.
your witnesses need a copy.
No,
Just,
not
like
much.
who's
Yeah.
See, because in here, you're gonna designate at least one agent, if not two or three. It's a good put. And those agents need this copy. Those agents need to be talked to. They need to know your
Those
Your thought
agents are in
process.
succession. The top one is first.
yes, yeah.
All three
your
don't have to
backup.
agree.
Right.
And you don't need a lawyer to look at that.
Right. No. Sometimes if you feel, if you're doing a will, you're doing, this and everything else, you might wanna ask them, but it's gonna cost you more money. Now if you've got a question on something, or you wanna go into detail about something, I know Scott's made notes on a couple of line items that after a few minutes of them trying the chest compressions and that, to give up, that kind of thing. That they don't keep trying, or they don't innovate, they don't do this, and because there's a whole lot of different circumstances that can cause them to want to do one thing versus another thing versus this or that. So if you specify in here, or your agent knows exactly what your thought process is, there's no questions on this. And like I try and we all say, this is for information only. We are not the experts on this. So, and I can tell you, there's lawyers out there, there's attorneys out there, there's elder law. They all have different opinions too on all of this. So find yourself a good one, or, just read over it very carefully, feeling that you're informed enough, and have it filled out. Now, this one is only for Georgia, like it says, just Georgia, okay? So if you move, or if you're in a different state or whatever, this is for Georgia, okay? So if you're moving, or your family moves you out of state, this won't apply any longer. Now this one, right now, since you live in Georgia, you only need one or the other, okay? If they both apply in Georgia, you only need one or the other. I'm gonna fill out both of them, and put them in ours, and I don't care. Yes, I don't care. But this one is in 42 states, okay? So, and Georgia is one of the states. This is a little kinder, gentler. This one is from the state and from the government and everything else. This one, what kind of music do you want at your funeral? How do you want to be treated, on the softer, kinder level of things. So, it's nice. This is kinder.
There's a wallet card.
What's that?
There's a little wallet card.
Yeah. It's kinder and gentler, and maybe, some of these things might trigger what you want to put in notes in here. Who knows? But, as long as this is followed, if you're in Georgia, and this is followed, you're covered. You're covered. But, I would say have both. More information is better than none, right? Okay.
I also offer a suggestion with the drug list and stuff.
Yes.
Laminate it. Take it to
Yes,
Staples or
good
someplace
idea.
and laminate it.
Yes.
Because inevitably somebody might spill water on it, or you need to write with like a dry erase on it, something that changes, or
That's a good idea.
you can,
Yeah.
like for caregivers, if it's laminated, it doesn't.
I've got one thing I just thought about, just listening to you talk, and just know that what the experience that I've gone through, and I know we're getting close to time, that, just kind of learning as you go, for me. My mom had it, my father-in-law, and now my dad. So I have 3 sons, and they are all out of the house as we talk about our kids. And for me, you know, when I think what I tell them from my experience and what I want for me, I just sometimes think if there were more, and I want to say my kids are from, well, my oldest one is 48 and my youngest one is 42, but that's where they can be in classes so they can get the information, because I can tell them and I can do, but they have no idea. And I don't want them to walk into what I walked into for us and everything. So I just think about, you know, if that is something that you can share, you know, at one of your classes, like your kids, like getting them involved in being able to learn, because some of them, they don't see or they only hear. So until they actually have to see it and experience it, they'll never kind of get, you know, okay. Because this is one thing that I tell my kids, for me, because I have gone through all three experiences, that my wish, which I'm in writing it down now, that I don't want them to be, and then it's not a burden, but sometimes that you give up a whole lot. And some can handle it and some can't.